In the small town of Willow Creek, Iowa, where the cornfield stretched endlessly under a wide, unblemished sky, life moved at a leisurely pace. The town was a patchwork of clapboard houses, a single gas station, and a diner called Mabel's that served pancakes so fluffy they were practically a local legend. Everyone knew everyone else, and the biggest event of the year was the county fair, where folks competed over prize pumpkins and square danced under strings of fairy lights. It was here, in the summer of 2025, that something extraordinary happened to Vera Thompson, known to all as Grandma Vera, a woman who'd lived through 72 winters and had a story for every one of them. Grandma Vera was a fixture in Willow Creek. Her small farmhouse sat at the edge of town, where the pavement gave way to gravel roads and the woods thickened into a tangle of oak and maple. Her hair was a wiry gray, pulled into a bun, and her hands were calloused from years of tending her garden and canning peaches. Her husband, Earl, had passed a decade ago, and her kids had moved to Des Moines and Chicago, leaving her to her routines, feeding her chickens, knitting scarves for the church bazaar, and swapping gossip with her neighbors. She was known for her sharp wit, her refusal to use the smartphone her grandson had given her. "What do I need that contraption for? I've got a perfectly good rotary phone." And her knack for predicting the weather by the ache in her knees. It was a warm July night, the kind where the air hung heavy and the stars burned bright against a velvet sky. Grandma Vera couldn't sleep. Her joints throbbed from a day spent weeding her tomato patch, and the cicadas' chorus was louder than usual. She sat on her porch swing, a glass of iced tea sweating in her hand, listening to the rustle of leaves in the breeze. The woods beyond her property were quiet, save for the occasional hoot of an owl. She was about to head inside when she noticed a strange glow flickering through the trees, a pulsing light that shifted between green and blue, like a neon sign gone haywire. Now, Grandma Vera wasn't one to scare easily. She'd faced down everything from tornado warnings to nosy IRS agents in her time. Curiosity piqued, she grabbed her cane, slipped on her old work boots, and shuffled toward the woods. "If it's kids with fireworks, I'll tan their hides," she muttered. "If it's something else, well, I'll deal with it." The glow grew brighter as she neared a clearing deep in the woods, where the trees parted to reveal a sight that stopped her cold. Hovering a foot above the ground was a craft, sleek and metallic, about the size of a pickup truck. Its surface shimmered, reflecting the strange light that pulsed from within. Grandma Vera's grip tightened on her cane, her heart thumping like a bass drum. Before she could decide whether to holler or hightail it back home, a hatch slid open with a soft whoosh, and 3 figures stepped out. They weren't human, not by a long shot. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with limbs like willow branches and heads too large for their slender frames. Their skin gleamed like polished chrome, and their eyes were huge, black, and deep as a moonless night. Grandma Vera's first thought was to swing her cane, but a strange calm washed over her, rooting her to the spot. One of the beings raised a hand, and though no words were spoken, she felt a message in her mind: "We come in peace." "What in tarnation do you want with an old lady like me?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the surreal scene. The beings didn't answer, not in words. Instead, her mind filled with images, stars spinning in vast galaxies, planets with rings of fire, networks of light weaving through the cosmos. She saw Earth from above, its oceans glinting, then flashes of things she couldn't make sense of, cities made of glass, skies with 3 moons, creatures that glowed like fireflies. It was overwhelming, yet she felt no fear, only a strange sense of clarity. The encounter lasted maybe 10 minutes, though time seemed to blur. The beings retreated to their craft, the hatch closed, and the ship rose silently, vanishing into the starry sky. Grandma Vera stood alone in the clearing, her cane trembling in her hand. She felt different, lighter, somehow, her joints no longer aching, her mind sharp as a tack. She trudged back to her farmhouse, the events replaying like a movie in her head, and collapsed into bed, sleeping deeper than she had in years. When she woke the next morning, the world seemed normal again. The roosters crowed, the coffee pot gurgled, and her knees ached as usual. She might have chalked it up to a dream, except for one thing: her iced tea glass, which she'd left on the porch, was now on her kitchen counter, filled with a strange, shimmering liquid that smelled faintly of honey. She didn't drink it, she wasn't born yesterday, but she poured it into a mason jar and hid it in the pantry, a quiet proof that something had happened. That night, the talking began. Grandma Vera had always been a light sleeper, but now, as soon as the house fell silent, she'd sit bolt upright in bed, her eyes wide and unseeing, and start to speak. Her voice was soft, almost musical, a far cry from her usual gravelly tone. She spoke of things she had no business knowing, a drought that would hit Iowa next summer, a barn fire in nearby Cedar Falls, a young couple in Des Moines expecting twins on the next new moon. At first, she thought she was losing her mind. She'd wake in the morning with no memory of what she'd said, only a dry throat and a nagging sense of unease. Her neighbor, Betty Lou, was the first to notice. Betty, a retired schoolteacher with a nose for gossip, had stopped by one morning to drop off a basket of zucchini and found Grandma Vera muttering about a bridge collapse in Davenport. "Vera, you feeling all right?" Betty asked, her eyebrows raised. Grandma Vera blinked, confused. "What are you on about? I didn't say nothing about no bridge." But Betty wasn't one to let a mystery slide. She started coming over at night, sitting in a rocking chair in Vera's bedroom with a notepad, scribbling down every word the old woman uttered. Word spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. By the end of the week, half the town was whispering about Grandma Vera's nighttime prophecies. Some thought it was dementia, others swore she'd been touched by God. A few, like old man Jenkins at the feed store, muttered about government experiments and them UFOs. Betty, ever the pragmatist, decided to test Vera's words. She checked the news and found that a small fire had indeed broken out in a barn near Cedar Falls, just as Vera had described. A week later, the local paper reported a couple in Des Moines welcoming twins on the exact night Vera had predicted. Betty's notepad filled up fast. Soon, folks were lining up at Grandma Vera's doorstep, clutching crumpled dollar bills and homemade pies, begging to know their futures. There was young Sarah Miller, who wanted to know if she'd get into nursing school, Tom Bradley, who asked about his struggling farm, and even Pastor Dan, who sheepishly inquired about the church's fundraising drive. Grandma Vera, bewildered by the attention, insisted she didn't remember a thing. "I'm just an old woman trying to get some sleep," she'd snap, shooing them away. But Betty, ever the organizer, started scheduling listening sessions, charging a small fee to keep the crowds manageable. The sessions were eerie. Grandma Vera would lie in bed, her eyes glassy, speaking in that strange, melodic voice. She'd describe events with uncanny detail: a car accident on Route 30, a record-breaking harvest for the Johnson farm, a scandal involving the mayor's son. Betty would transcribe it all, and word would spread. When the drought hit the following summer, exactly as Vera had foretold, Willow Creek's skepticism began to crumble. People started calling her the Oracle of Willow Creek, half in jest, half in awe. Grandma Vera, though, wasn't thrilled about her new reputation. She missed her quiet nights and resented the strangers trampling her petunias. She confided in Betty one evening, her voice low, "I don't know what's happening to me, Betty Lou. It's like something's using me, speaking through me. I didn't ask for this." Betty, patting her hand, suggested it might be a gift. "Maybe the good Lord's got plans for you, Vera. Or maybe it's something else entirely." That something else gnawed at Grandma Vera. She hadn't told anyone about the night in the woods, not Betty, not her kids, not even Pastor Dan. The memory of the shimmering craft and those strange beings haunted her. But she kept the mason jar of glowing liquid hidden, a private reminder. She began to suspect the encounter had changed her, rewired something in her brain. She'd always been practical, not given to flights of fancy. But now she wondered, had those creatures given her this gift, or was it a curse? As the months passed, the prophecies grew stranger. Grandma Vera spoke of things beyond Willow Creek, a political upheaval in Washington, a new technology that would change how people traveled, a distant war that would spark over a single ship. Betty's notepad couldn't keep up, and soon reporters from Des Moines and even Chicago started sniffing around. A tabloid ran a story titled "Iowa Granny Channels Aliens," with a grainy photo of Vera hoeing her garden. She threw the paper in the trash, muttering about city folk with no sense. But the attention brought trouble. A group of UFO enthusiasts set up camp in the woods near her house, shining flashlights and scanning the skies with binoculars. A shady preacher from out of town tried to recruit her for his ministry, claiming her visions were divine. Worst of all, her grandson, Jake, a tech-savvy 20-something from Chicago, showed up with a podcast microphone, begging her to go viral. "Grandma, you could be famous. Think of the ad revenue." Vera chased him out with a broom, yelling, "I don't need no internet nonsense." The breaking point came one winter night, when Grandma Vera's prophecy was darker than usual. She sat up in bed, her voice trembling, and spoke of a shadow falling over the land, a time of chaos where the skies would weep fire. Betty, scribbling furiously, felt a chill. The next morning, Vera was shaken. "I don't want to be saying these things, Betty," she whispered. "What if they come true?" For the first time, Betty had no reassuring words. Determined to understand her gift, Grandma Vera finally told Betty about the night in the woods. Betty listened, wide-eyed, as Vera described the craft, the beings, and the strange liquid in the jar. "You think they did this to me?" Vera asked. Betty, practical as ever, suggested they test the liquid. They sent a sample to a lab in Des Moines, claiming it was pond water. The results came back inconclusive, with traces of unknown compounds that baffled the technicians. "Whatever it is, it ain't from around here," Betty said, half joking. The two women decided to keep the encounter a secret, but Grandma Vera couldn't shake the feeling that her gift was a burden. She started refusing visitors, locking her door at night to keep Betty and her notepad out. But the visions wouldn't stop. Every night, she spoke of futures near and far, her words spilling out like a river she couldn't dam. The town began to split. Some saw her as a saint, others as a witch. Kids dared each other to sneak onto her property, whispering that she glowed in the dark. One spring evening, as the first fireflies blinked in the fields, Grandma Vera made a decision. She sat on her porch, the mason jar in her hands, and stared at the woods where it all began. She didn't know if the beings were watching, if they'd meant to change her, or if it was all a cosmic accident, but she was tired of being a mouthpiece for forces she didn't understand. She poured the liquid into the grass, watching it sink into the earth, and whispered, "Leave me be." That night, for the first time in months, she didn't speak. She slept through the night, waking to a quiet house and a sense of peace. The prophecies stopped, and though Willow Creek buzzed with rumors, Grandma Vera went back to her garden, her chickens, and her iced tea. Betty, disappointed but loyal, stopped bringing her notepad. The UFO enthusiasts moved on, the reporters found new stories, and Jake gave up on his podcast dreams. Years later, when Grandma Vera was 90, she told the story to her great-granddaughter, Lily. "One starry night on the porch, don't know if they were angels or devils," she said, her voice soft, "but they gave me a glimpse of what's to come, and I reckon that's more than most folks get." Lily, wide-eyed, asked if she missed it. Vera chuckled. "Child, I'd rather plant my tomatoes and watch the sunset. The future's coming whether I see it or not." And so, Grandma Vera lived out her days in Willow Creek, her legend fading into local lore. The woods stayed quiet, the stars kept their secrets, and the town went back to its sleepy ways. But every now and then, when a drought hit or a fire sparked, folks would whisper about the night Grandma Vera spoke the future, and wonder what else she might have seen.